have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. This is episode number 185, and I am the host, Mandy Bryce, and I am super excited to share another inspiring story with you today. If this is your first time listening, every Monday I share an interview with somebody who has taken risks, or as you may call them, bold moves, outside of his or her comfort zone and has impacted not only their own life, but the lives of others in an extremely positive way, and of course, lived to tell the tale. This week I chatted with Brianne Pruitt, or Bree, who was a registered nurse and felt like she wasn't helping people, which is unimaginable to me. But she found a different path as a certified health coach and now is living her purpose and helping other people cut toxins out of their lives as the hippy dippy mom, which you probably would guess is something outside of the mom part that I can identify with quite a bit. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoy our chat because I think it is something that has a lot of little tips that you can use to impact your life on a daily basis and hopefully become healthier in the process. So without further ado, I give to you my interview with Brianne Pruitt. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. I am with Brianne Pruitt today and super excited to hear your story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
My pleasure. So of course you know that the show is called Bold Moves and you wouldn't have been asked to be on it if you hadn't made some yourself. So why don't you share a little bit about your story and the risks that you've taken and how they've paid off for you?
So I am a wife and a mom. I've been a registered nurse since 2009. And then I've been a certified health coach since 2016. And so I basically have suffered with my own, negative health issues for really as long as I can remember, like things like brain fog and fatigue. I had some depression and anxiety. I had issues with fertility. It took us a year and a half to get pregnant with my daughter. Migraines, just all kinds of things going on. And I always just wanted to know why and how I could prevent this stuff from happening again or coming back, how I could get rid of it. So that basically led me to doing my own research because I was having trouble getting help from kind of the typical healthcare professionals.
Sure.
So I did my own research and basically just experimented on myself with eliminating toxins, eating better. And I really started to notice really significant improvements in my health just by eliminating things that I had never really questioned before. So that is what led me to go back to school to become a health coach. And so now myself, my family, we live, I guess, what's considered kind of a different lifestyle than most people just because we're really conscientious of every single choice that we make, from, the food that we eat to exercise to what we're putting on our skin to what I'm cooking my food in, what I'm storing it in, what I'm cleaning with. And, we just are really, really aware of all that. My daughter is 6 years old, and so I really try to fit a lot of education into our day with all those choices so that she knows exactly why we're making those choices. And she knows, she even said last night, my mommy's a good mommy because she really wants me to be so healthy. So she really knows. So I feel like being bold as far as our healthy choices goes is what's really led us to be happier and healthier than we've ever been. And when I say we, I'm specifically talking about myself and my husband as well.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the changes that you have made? It sounds like we probably live similar lives because I am definitely conscious of most of those things and trying to get better in other areas. But what are some of the changes you've made and some of the results you've seen from those changes?
I honestly feel like how I used to live is totally different than how I live today. Um, I used to think that I was healthy,
Yeah.
but I really wasn't. So, I really try to watch my sugar intake. I'm always reading labels, whether it's on food or my skincare products,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid chemicals and toxins. And I mentioned cookware. So I'm, making sure that I'm picking, like, for example, we cook in cast iron.
Yeah.
I don't store any of my food in, I don't have any plastic, Tupperware containers anymore. It's all glass. Just things like that. And, I don't feel the brain fog anymore. I don't feel the fatigue anymore. I rarely get a migraine. And when I do, I know exactly why. Like if I kind of let myself slip and I have more sugar than I know I should have and I get a migraine as a result, I know why.
Yeah.
Um, my husband was able to work with his healthcare professional to get off cholesterol medication several years ago. Um, we're both around 40 years old and we feel better than we did in our 20s. So
That's
it's
amazing.
just paying off big time.
What would you say are things for someone who's listening and maybe hasn't yet begun the journey that you have done, but is intrigued on how to have fewer toxins in their lives that you can control? What would you recommend as far as good starting points for them?
Really getting a handle on the sugar intake, even if you think you're not consuming a lot of sugar. Most of us just consume way too much because not only is it in the obvious things like cakes and cookies and stuff, but it's actually hidden in a lot of things like barbecue sauces and salad dressings, things you wouldn't really ever expect sugar to
Yeah.
be in.
Even like the
So
powdered
start looking at
taco
the,
seasoning.
yeah,
I make my own now because I was looking at the grocery store, even at Whole Foods, like it's organic and great, yay, but then it's
yep,
like, why is there sugar in this? It's
yeah.
taco seasoning. I don't want sweet tacos.
I know. No, that's so funny you say that because at Whole Foods as well, I was looking for some green enchilada sauce once and
Mhm.
I could not find one there that didn't have sugar in it. And I thought the same thing, like, I don't want sweet enchiladas. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was weird. But, that's another good point is there's all these fun words on the front of packaging like organic and gluten free and natural. And that's all the marketing.
Right.
You really have to turn packages over and actually look at the ingredients, look at the sugar content. Um, so I especially for sugar, I like to give some kind of guidelines as to like what numbers you're looking for. So for kids, the recommended daily amount of added sugar is 11 grams in one day. And then I suggest lowering that number for younger children.
Hmm.
And then for an average adult woman, it's about 25 grams of sugar a day. And then for men, it's about 36 grams of sugar a day. And so, following those guidelines and starting to pay attention to nutrition labels, I think that most people will be very surprised at how fast you can get to those numbers.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. So you
Yeah,
specified added sugar. When you're looking at labels, like
yeah,
obviously, since you're saying added sugar, it wouldn't count if you eat an orange and that doesn't
right.
have a label anyway. But how can you tell by looking at the amount of sugar in something that's packaged, what is the actual added sugar versus the
Mhm.
like natural
But
sugars?
yeah, well, so manufacturers have just started recently changing their labels to where now it lists the added sugar.
Oh,
So
okay.
before it just used to say sugars. And
Yeah.
so now it'll still say sugars, but then right below it, it'll say added sugars.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah. If it doesn't, though, because I'm sure there are still some, older versions of the labels on stuff out there. Um, Again, just reading the ingredients, anything that ends in OSE is a sugar. If there's anything listed as a syrup on
Hmm.
there, it's a sugar. If there's anything as like a juice concentrate, that's a sugar. So you'll kind of get a good idea if you look on the label and it's like high fructose corn syrup and sucrose and grape juice grape juice concentrate, then you'll know
Sure.
that there's added sugar in there.
Right. Maltodextrin,
Yes.
agave,
Yep.
honey.
Yep.
All
Yep.
of those things are like agave and honey, I feel like got really popular for a while, but it's
Yeah.
still sugar.
Still sugar. Yep. Maple syrup, honey, it's
Yeah.
still sugar.
At
Yeah.
least it's more natural and our bodies are more adept at processing it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you there. I'm curious. I always ask this whenever I have nutrition professionals with who are parents on, because my husband and I talk about it all the time. We don't have children yet, but we plan to, and we're already stressing out about how we're going to encourage them without being overbearing to make good choices, and then
Yeah.
about, well, what happens when they're out in the world or over at their friends, or
Hmm.
their basketball team stops at McDonald's after a game or something. Like, how, what do? You said you educated, which I'm sure is super
Yeah.
helpful, but then how else do you handle it so far?
I think the education is huge. When she was really little, I would just tell her, um, if we were in the grocery store, let's say, and kind of walking by the bakery section, of course, it all looks so yummy. And so kids, tend to ask for that kind of stuff. And so I would just tell her, we don't really eat those things because they make us sick.
Mm-hmm.
That's about their level of understanding at a really young age. And then as she's
Sure.
gotten older, I've just kind of expanded upon what sick means.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we don't keep junk food in our house too
Mm-hmm.
much. She knows that it's, junk food, sweet treats are a rare treat. They're meant to
Mm-hmm.
be a treat, not something you have every single day.
Right.
Um, when we go to like birthday parties, for
I was
example,
gonna ask that. Yeah.
yeah, it's really hard, and that was something that I stressed about too. She's getting older and becoming a teenager. I obviously won't have control over what she's eating as much. So
Right.
it's really important to set this foundation. The earlier the better. So when she goes to birthday parties, um, I'll just let her know, if you want a piece of cake, then you can't have any of the pizza and the chips and the other candy that they have there first. It's a balance.
Yeah.
And I usually also try to feed her before we go.
That's
So she's
smart.
full, yeah. So she does get cake. I do try to scrape off the colored frosting,
Yeah.
just because we know that artificial colors are linked to all kinds of bad things.
Right.
Um, so she's okay with that. Um, and kind of funny enough too, she was over at a friend's house a couple weeks ago, and she told me that they offered her some kind of snack, but she knew that it had sugar in it, and she told
Yeah.
them, "No, thank you. I've already had sugar today."
Oh,
And
that's
so, yeah, so it was really awesome. So I just gave her loads and loads of positive reinforcement,
sure.
for that too. So it really is just educating and, feeding them the best foods while you have control over what they're eating all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I imagine too, if you're not used to, like, since I've transitioned from how I used to eat, which was horrible, and
Hmm.
tons of sugar, like above average crazy amounts of sugar. My husband's like, how did you never get really fat? So I would eat like 4 candy bars at a time, but
Yeah. Yeah.
before I knew him. But going from that, I guess, extreme to what some may consider an extreme of eating almost nothing that has a label, which is partially how I didn't even know that they changed that to the added sugar label. Your palate obviously changes a little. And I imagine with a little one, as it's developing, if you rarely get sugar, I feel like that cake would now be gross anyway. I mean, I'm sure it helps that you're scraping off that color frosting, because that's just like a pile of sugar and dye. But like, has she had that reaction at all where like maybe her friends are going crazy about something and she's like, oh my gosh, this is too much and kind of gross? Or
as far as sweets, no. Her and I'm in the same boat that you were. I used to eat way too much sugar. And unfortunately, I feel like I passed that down to her. We both have the sweet tooth.
Okay.
So I do just teach her, about balance and that there's still chemicals in that kind of food. There are times where she has turned down sweets, or she's taken a bite and been good with just one bite.
Yeah.
She would, much rather reach for like a watermelon or, a slice of apple or something, versus like the colorful, fun candy stuff that's out on tables.
That's great. Do you worry at all, or do you focus any education on how to manage socially? Like, for example, another thing that my husband and I have talked about with our future children is that we're nervous that they'll go somewhere and inadvertently insult someone's parents or family and be like, no, if I eat this, I'm going to get fat and sick, and like, say something that could potentially offend somebody else.
Yeah.
Have you done any of that? Because I think, I know I've already had sugar today is a great way to say it, and maybe she just naturally did, but I don't know if you were also like, okay, some people eat like this and it's just because they don't know, or like any explanation of other people's habits that it might scare her, or I don't know what she worries about her family because they don't eat like you do, or anything like that.
We do teach her that not everybody gets the connection between food and, poor health. We tell her that not everybody is, as aware, and they're not making the best choices.
Sure.
But not necessarily that they're doing it on purpose,
Right.
So kids, it's hard anyways because they just don't have that filter yet of like, maybe I shouldn't say this.
Right.
But we do tell her, that we're, if other families ask, then we can share information and our reasons for choosing what we choose. But if someone offers something that you shouldn't have, a simple no thank you does the job, but you don't have to say any of that stuff like, ew, that's going to make me fat.
So you do teach a little bit of tact.
Yeah, we teach a little bit. So it has taken some time, because there are times where there was one time I remember we were in an airport and there was this heavyset lady. Yeah. And my daughter was maybe 3 or 4, so they really don't have a filter at that age. But she pointed to her and said, "Mommy, that lady eats a lot of candy." And I was like, ah. Oh, no. So, yeah, I was like, okay, we don't point. And, she makes her own choices. So, it was just kind of doing what parents do with kids anyways.
Right. I was going to say that sounds like a standard.
Yeah.
Adventure.
Yeah.
I love
Definitely.
it. I feel like some of that tact that you're teaching your daughter could be useful for some health fanatic adults that get a little
I know. Get a little crazy with it. Yeah. Yeah.
But that's great, because I think that is so important. And like, obviously, if you or she or your family is going to make a difference and educate somebody else on why you make the choices you do, like they say, you attract a lot of more flies with sugar than salt, or whatever that phrase is. So getting preachy and forcing your beliefs on someone's not gonna really help anyone. So it's cool that she's learning so young.
Yeah, I feel like that was a lesson I had to learn the hard way at first, and people get really, really, really offensive over their food.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of emotional ties,
Yeah,
I think.
yes, exactly. So I learned that the hard way when I had, friends that wouldn't even want to like go out to lunch with me.
Wow.
And not necessarily because I even would say anything. They would just see the choices that I was making. And, it just makes people think about their own choices. And like
Sure.
you said, it's, yeah, the emotional tie with the comfort foods that have a really hard time giving up.
Yeah, and I'm sure they just feel like guilty and
Yeah.
defensive even if you don't say anything, and
Yes. Uh-huh.
they're judging themselves so they feel like you're judging them. That's tough.
Exactly. Yep.
Has that calmed down a little bit more over time, or is that still something that you experience with friends, acquaintances, family, and so on?
Um, I think it's calmed down over time. I still get responses like, if someone offers me, let's stick with the piece of cake example. If someone
Sure.
offers me a piece of cake and, I say, no, thank you. They say, well, you're thin, you can afford to eat it.
Oh,
And so, I don't usually say anything back just because it could turn into kind of a debate.
right.
um, so I've had that. I've had, um, when I tell people that I don't really eat much from a package, they're like, well, what do you eat? And so I'll tell them I eat real food. And they're like, oh, so nothing that tastes good, right? And
Oh,
it just kind
that's
of blows
sad.
my mind, that that's still the kind of mentality that a lot of people carry with them. And interestingly enough, a lot of those responses were from people that I worked with when I worked in healthcare as a nurse. So a lot
Yeah.
of doctors and other nurses,
That is mind blowing to me, but not a
yeah.
surprise. My husband's a physical therapist, and
Hmm.
we have been, I guess, a little further along on the health journey with in regards to nutrition for maybe 5 or 6 years, and he can't even like wrap his mind around how many different like continuing education courses he's been to where they serve donuts in the morning.
Yep.
He's like, if I eat that,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fall asleep and not learn anything. He's like, what are they doing? So he brings his own food to most of that. But it's kind of stunning how many healthcare providers have like the worst nutrition. It's like, I know they
Hmm.
tend to be busy, but like you can grab a handful of nuts, or they pre-cut
Hmm.
vegetables and fruit at the store, or there's
Yeah.
so many good options if you're willing to go a little bit out of your way and plan ahead. That can make
Yeah.
a difference.
Yeah. Once I started learning this stuff, I was surprised too, but kind of surprised, but then I don't know, not really, because it kind of makes sense. I was a little sad to learn that most healthcare professionals don't learn anything about nutrition
Yeah.
when they're in school. And we're just really taught that there is not a connection between the food that we're eating and all these chemicals that we're exposed to and the ever rising poor health statistics, you
It's
know?
insane.
Yeah, it's really sad.
So you've spoken about how, your coworkers as an RN. Are you still a practicing nurse in addition to being a health coach, or have you given up what I like to call sick care in exchange for actual health care?
I have given up sick care for actual health care, which is such an amazing feeling because as a nurse, I never really felt like I was helping people get
Yeah,
healthy.
that's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Like I've encountered some incredible nurses that are super helpful. So to feel so defeated after all those years of studying and the long
Hmm.
hours, I can't imagine
Yeah.
feeling that way.
Yeah. It was really hard. And, um, you know, I was doing health coaching at the same time in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
um, while I was still working as a nurse. So just to watch what some of the patients would eat And the amount of medication that they were on, I was just
Yeah.
like, uh, if you just changed what you ate, you would see such a huge improvement,
Yeah, but
But
I think our society has gotten so interested in the like quick and easy fix. Like Tommy sees the same thing with patients where he tells them, well, if you just do these exercises, you can completely avoid surgery. And they're like, well, I'm just going to get the surgery. And it's like, well, guess
yeah,
what? You're going to have to do those exercises after surgery anyways.
yeah,
May as well just start them now and maybe avoid having somebody cut into your body.
I know. It amazes me. I just don't understand sometimes. That was what led me into making healthy choices. Was I was sick and tired of being sick and tired,
Right.
and just wanted a day where I could think clearly.
Sure.
And so that was and still is my motivating factor to make healthy choices. And then yeah, you have those people that are going to have surgery, and I just don't. I'm kind of trying to figure out that thought process and like how to
Sure.
get in there with some people, to where they do go, oh, it's so much easier to grab an apple instead of this cookie, and that could prevent stuff down the road. So let me grab that apple, you
Yeah.
know?
I think going back to what you said about your friends saying, well, you're thin, you can afford it, is a big part of the issue because I think a lot of people, like I've had that experience as well. And for me, it's a lot easier to work out a lot than it is to eat well. And I know that the eating part has the biggest results on it. But I think
Mm-hmm.
what people often forget is that it's not just about how you look. It's not just about how much you weigh,
Mm-hmm.
but like every time you eat something good for you, it does a lot of other things that you don't even see. So it's easy to forget.
Yes.
Same thing with
Yes.
working out. Every single time you do, even if the scale doesn't budge and the measuring tape doesn't budge and you still have to wear the same jeans,
Mm-hmm.
like your body's getting stronger, you're getting harder to
Yeah.
kill or whatever. So I think remembering that
Yeah.
there's more to it than just, the outward appearance of what it is makes a big impact. But I think it's a harder message to
Mm-hmm.
really get people to remember.
Yeah, one of the things that really helps me stay on track, and this is something I feel can come in handy for anybody. It's something I share with all my clients is whenever you're about to make really any choice, whether it's the food you're eating or getting that exercise in today or sitting on the couch or the lotion that you're putting on, ask yourself, is this going to help me or is this going to harm me?
Mm-hmm.
And that makes the decision so much easier.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at things. So I'm curious, going back to your story a little bit more, what is the scariest thing you've ever done or the scariest moment you've experienced?
As far as my health or just,
In life, your career, health, whatever you want to share that you think would be impactful to the listeners and viewers.
I think becoming my own boss as a health coach and leaving behind that stable, air quotes, nursing position,
Sure.
because, I think that's still kind of something that a lot of us think is work for somebody else and have that job security
Right.
and put into that 401k. And so that was kind of scary, leaving that behind and figuring out how to just work for myself, but still have job security and, financially sound future.
Sure.
But totally worth it.
Absolutely. I'm curious, this is one that I like to ask people who have advanced degrees or something that a lot of specialized education goes into. And obviously, or maybe not, I don't know, but I would assume that some of the things that you learned in your schooling and becoming an RN are still useful to you at least about the human body and how it works. But do you ever feel like you wasted your time, or have you ever had people say, well, like, what about all that schooling? Like, you've wasted
Yeah.
your degree or anything like that? Has that ever come up for you?
Yes, totally. From my coworkers, I got that a lot. Like,
Yeah.
you went to school, and you have your license and you worked really hard for it and you're just throwing it away.
Yeah.
My thought process behind it is, yes, it definitely helps me out as a health coach because I have more of an understanding than, a health coach that doesn't have a nursing license. I have more of an understanding about medications and, how the body works. For me, the time I spent in school and the time I spent working as a nurse served its purpose in that moment. It did create that financial stability for me
Mm-hmm.
during the time that I was using it. So I don't think that it was a waste of time to, go to school as a nurse and work as a nurse and then not be, quote unquote, using it anymore.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's a really healthy and just like aware mindset around it. I think that's great that that's how you look at that for sure.
Thank
I,
you.
yeah, absolutely. For certified health coach, that I believe is a newer type of job. I don't remember hearing of that when I was a kid, and maybe it's like within the last 10 years it started to be a little bit more popular. How does one do
Mhm.
that, and what are the certifying organizations that, what does it take, and how do you become certified?
So there's actually quite a few programs out there now, and they all kind of focus on something different. So there are programs that um, focus more on like the psychology of eating,
Okay.
and helping people kind of get through that aspect of it. Um, I went through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
Okay.
So their focus, it was kind of on everything, just the whole person. They taught all kinds of um, like dietary things, like vegan, vegetarian, then they talked about like the fad diets and stuff. Um, they talk about, we can eat all the broccoli and kale in the world, but if we're in a horrible relationship or if we're unhappy with our job and all that stuff, you're still not going to be, the healthiest person. So they
Yeah.
focus on the whole person. Um, and the program I went through was a year-long program. It was online. So really go at your own pace. And it was really cool because it's a lot of video, but then they did have, towards the end, they had kind of like group calls with a mentor and then other people in the program as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I like to point out, if anyone is looking to work with a health coach, you really want to make sure that they are certified, that they have gone through a program, because there are some, especially some like network marketing companies that, have their products and they train people on their products. And then I've met some of those people that work with those companies and they call themselves health coaches as well, but they're really, training you on how to use their product.
Sure.
Um, I love network marketing companies. I, work with a couple of them, so I'm not saying anything bad about
Right.
them, but I'm just saying make sure, if you're working with a health coach that they are certified.
Absolutely. And I think it's
Yeah.
good advice too when you're making decisions about your health, that while it is important to get guidance from experts, I think doing your own research too to make sure
Yes.
that you can find good facts to back things up. And, every body is so different. So what works for one
Mm-hmm.
person may not be great for, you personally. So paying attention and really getting intuitive on that, I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah, huge difference. Yeah, that's why, your friend's doing this crazy diet and she looks amazing, and then you try it and you feel horrible.
Right,
It is,
exactly.
yeah, it's totally different from person to person. And I love, that you threw that out there too about research. That's, a huge part of it is don't just believe what someone tells you, always question everything.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of my first guests when the show just started, I think she was like the third or fourth person I had on here, actually wrote a best-selling book on, it's called The Paleothyroid Solution. And
Mm-hmm.
she was told that she'd have to be on medication forever. And again, the same kind of things that, there's no connection between
Mm-hmm.
what we put in and on our bodies and our health, which just seems so ridiculous. But
I
she
know.
was able to help a lot of people, just look at what they're putting in their bodies and make
Mm-hmm.
a difference. And, I think there is a place for modern medicine for sure. And I like that what
Mm-hmm.
you said with your results that your husband worked with his doctors to get off medication, like not just irresponsibly like, oh, I'm not eating sugar anymore, I can stop taking these. But
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a place for it, but we are in control of our health, and we have to be our own best advocates. So,
exactly.
we really have to step into that role.
Right. Yeah. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like whenever I have someone like you on here that's focused on nutrition and like medical things come up, I always worry that I'm giving some impression that I'm like, doctors are idiots or,
I know.
and
Yeah.
I don't think that way. I think, nurses and doctors and, all sorts of healthcare professionals definitely are important, but I think it's more important, like you said, to be an advocate for yourself and make educated choices, because this is the only body we have, so you got to take care
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
of it. So I'm curious, when you were about to make that transition from being an RN to being a full-time health coach, how did you push past the fear, and what kind of steps did you take to kind of make sure you weren't leaping off a cliff with no net? Unless you did that and just had faith and however you made that work.
I was doing, building up the health coaching part of it for maybe about 2 years before I quit
Mhm.
working in a hospital. So there was, a lot of the back end stuff, like building up my program. I have the website where I blog and
Mhm.
have an online program. So there's multiple streams of income coming in from,
Sure.
affiliate links in the programs and all that kind of stuff. Um, but it was kind of just getting to the point where basically I couldn't take it anymore, combined with we were moving.
Okay.
So yeah, it was just like I'm done. I'm quitting, and I'm just not even going to look for another nursing job. Um, which is great too, because now I can focus 100%
Mhm.
on the health coaching and the website and all that stuff. So it's just going to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did you move?
We moved from Southern California to Northern Idaho, so
Oh, wow.
totally
That's
different. Yeah.
dramatic change.
Yeah.
Was that your husband's job or family, or what brought on that move?
That is, we were just not liking where we were living
Okay.
anymore. So we had been planning for a little while to move. We had been looking around different states and different areas. And so, yeah, it just came to a point where we were like, okay, it's time.
Gotcha. And where in
So we
SoCal
moved.
were you?
We were in Orange County.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're in Orange County. I'm in LA, so
Oh, okay. We were close to like San Juan Capistrano, Dana Point area.
okay. I thought
Yeah,
every
Laguna
time I've been there,
Beach.
it's beautiful. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just wasn't for you.
No, yeah, we wanted, less traffic, and I don't know how you do LA. Ugh, traffic in LA is horrible.
I'm lucky that most of the time I'm able to go at weird times. So even
Okay.
though there is definitely traffic at weird times, like why is there so many people out at 1 a.m. or
Yeah.
but primarily I can avoid rush hour and my husband bikes to work
Oh, cool.
train.
That's
So,
good.
yeah. All right, so you kind of set up a safety net, but it was, I'm sure, still scary. So what tips would you give to push past fear?
I would just say just do it because no matter what, that fear is always going to be there. There honestly are still times where I question, like, should I, go look for that nursing job? Because
Right.
it's like deeply ingrained in there that I should have a job and I should have that, you know, every 2 weeks paycheck coming in. But I think it's really just following your passion.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't passionate about working as a nurse in a hospital,
Yeah.
I am passionate about health coaching. So I'm just really trying not even to give myself that option.
There you go. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you know what your purpose is? If not, it's understandable because I know that that's a really big question. But if you do and you don't mind sharing, I'd love to hear it.
I really feel my purpose is to help kids get healthier.
Okay.
It just breaks my heart that so many kids are sick when they don't need to be.
Yeah.
There's so much childhood cancer. There's so many kids on crazy medications. Um, so I really feel like that's my purpose.
How are you specifically going towards that with your health coaching?
I work with families is my main market, my main audience. I'll work with anybody. I love helping anybody
Right.
get healthier, but my passion is with the families because, of course, to help kids get healthier, it's the parents making all the decisions. It's the
Right.
parents grocery shopping. So that is my my target people to work with.
Absolutely. If somebody is listening and they're interested in working with you or checking out your blog, where can we find you online?
My website is hippydippymom.com.
Okay.
And it's HIPPIEDIPPIE mom.com. And then it's the same on, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook. It's at Hippy Dippy Mom.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm curious, we talked about being your own healthcare advocate and making sure you're making informed choices. And you're also an entrepreneur, so you could give recommendations based on that as well. But I always like to ask my guests for book recommendations in case somebody is listening. Anything that you would like to share, it can be in any genre, something nice to read at the beach, or I guess you're not at the beach anymore in Idaho, but
Yeah.
so from entertaining to educational, profound, any book recommendations you might have?
I have one totally favorite book that I kind of feel like can fit any of those categories that you just said. It is technically a self-help book, but it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F.
Word.
Okay. But yeah. And the author is Mark Manson. So, it's just such an excellent book. It is absolutely one of my favorite books. It's straightforward, as you can tell by the title. It is funny too. And it just really tells you how, really to live for yourself.
Yeah.
And how not to care so much about what other people think or what other people are doing. It's really just one of my absolute favorite books. I tell everybody I can about it.
That's awesome. Any other recommendations?
Gosh.
You don't have to, if nothing.
Yeah. I think that's really That's really my favorite. If it's something about health, really just any health book you can get your
Sure.
hand on, because you can go for one topic and find, like, I don't know, hundreds of different books on it.
Yeah.
So it really is doing that research and in a variety. So if there is a health book that you're going to read or look for, I would not just stop at one.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I would say sometimes too, it's important to read the counter argument.
Yeah.
The opposite book.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting because there are so many differing opinions and information out there on the same exact, diet or health topic.
Absolutely. Do you have
Yeah.
any tips for people on how to navigate when it might seem like they're getting a lot of crazy messages from,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, your friends doing crazy diets, there's books, internet, network marketers, like I feel like we're being bombarded with information now. Like how do you recommend people navigate through the sea of info they're getting?
A lot of it is really listening to your body.
Mm-hmm.
If you try something new or something your friend's doing and you notice you're just not feeling well, that's your body's way of telling you it doesn't like whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, with the research, there are very well known and very well documented ingredients in everything, in food and skincare, that we know without a doubt leads to negative health issues. So doing research or working with someone that has done the research, and reading those labels, no matter what other people say, I think is really, really one of the most important things that everybody should be doing.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up because I wanted to ask earlier and then got sidetracked. So I mentioned that I am like on the same journey of eliminating as many toxins as I can. And I feel like I'm good at least knowing what to do food wise. I don't always necessarily make the best choices in the moment, but I know what I'm doing there. I think I got the fitness thing down pretty well. We also have almost no plastic, and our cleaning products are clean and natural as well. But one thing that I struggle with a bit is more the skincare. Our toothpaste is natural, our mouthwash is natural, and I try, but skincare and makeup, I'm wondering if you have any recommendations, more so even makeup, because I'm a professional makeup artist, and so most of the time I don't wear makeup unless I'm being in front of people, and even then I don't always promise it, but I am still clinging to a lot of products because they just still perform better. And I just figure that, if I'm only doing it once in a while, it's at least not every day. And I have my personal things that are more on the natural end or organic. And then I have, my pro kit that is not natural. So I'm wondering if you have any tips there.
Yeah. So, I really like to make things as easy as possible for other people when it comes to making better choices. So the number one thing I always tell people to look for on cleaning products or skincare products or makeup is the word fragrance. And if you see the word fragrance, that is something that you definitely don't want to be using, because it takes hundreds and maybe even thousands of chemicals to create a fragrance.
Wow.
So if you see the word fragrance, it's bad.
Okay.
One of my favorite makeup brands that I use is Alima Pure. It's Alima Pure.
Okay.
And I feel like, for their blushes and eyeshadows and everything, the pigment is really, really good. I feel like that's kind of a myth out there, is things that are natural don't work as well, don't cover as well. And I don't find that to be the case with Alima Pure. And then another good brand is Beauty Counter.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that brand. There's there's a lot more that are being made and coming available now that are really good, good color, good coverage, and not filled with junky chemicals. So look for fragrance and don't use those products. And then I like those two brands of beauty products.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'd be interested to see. I can't imagine having this luxury anytime soon, but with like the 4K and 5K cameras, it's kind of incredible what shows up. And I'd be curious to like compare some of the more traditional pro products to some of those and see how they share up. Really?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Cool. Well, do you have any other advice related to life, entrepreneurship, or the topics that you're an expert in with, just like living a clean life?
Yeah, I mean, don't use fragrance, get your sugar habit under control, go for your passion and just live your life in whatever way you can that makes you the happiest and healthiest. I mean, I would say that those are probably the top tips that'll keep you busy.
Yeah, those you could spend your life on those. Yeah. Well, I'm going to save my last question, my favorite question for last. It is, if 8-year-old Bree had a crystal ball and could see where you are now, you said you're almost 40, I think. On a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little Bree be to see where you have been since you were 8, the journey, and then of course, the foreseeable future? You may know what you're doing next month or, coming up. How excited would you be on a scale of 1 to 11?
I think she'd be at 11.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's amazing. Like I think I mentioned that we feel better now than we did in our 20s. And so I'm just super excited. I really look forward to tomorrow and to my next birthday and to 10 years from now, what that is going to hold. So I'm excited for it. And I think 8-year-old Bree would be really excited about it too.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. I love when people say 11, or even the rule breakers, even though I'm a rule follower. I like when the rule breakers give like a 15 or a million. Yeah. It's always great to hear that, someone's enjoying what they're doing and not being too hard on themselves. Because I see some amazingly successful people who answer that question and give me like a 7 or 8 because they have so much more to achieve. And I'm like, no, celebrate what you have.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would probably also give myself lower than an 11 because I'm hard on myself. So I should practice.
You should.
Well, thank you so much for what you're doing for the world. I'm so happy to hear that it's working so well for you and your family and that you're so happy. And I really appreciate all of the tips that you're giving to my listeners. And I really hope they connect with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Get your help if they need it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. This was really fun.
My pleasure. I am hoping that the chat didn't scare you per se, but that it at least is causing you to take a second look at some of the ingredients of the things that you are putting in and on your body. And we didn't talk too much about cleaning, but if you just think about any time that you've done some heavy duty cleaning with chemicals and how difficult it can be to breathe, maybe thinking about those cleaning products as well. I also forgot to mention during our interview that there is an app called Think Dirty that I try to remember to use because it grades different products, especially beauty products, on a score of, I believe, A to F, based upon how clean it is and what the ingredients are. So if you're ever standing in the store deciding between two products and you want to know which one might be better from an ingredient standpoint, the Think Dirty app is something that I recommend checking out. All right, I hope you enjoyed the conversation, not just to try to scare you, but hopefully it inspires you to live better, which is kind of my goal. And speaking of my goals, in addition to just living better in general, I'm trying to inspire and help as many people as I possibly can to live the lives of their dreams. And I feel like I do that by sharing these amazing stories of people who have gone after their dreams to hopefully help you realize that you can do that too. So please share this episode to anyone who you think would find it interesting or inspiring or could use the information on eliminating toxins. I really think that that would be a great help to me, because the more eyes and ears that get to this podcast, the more people I can potentially impact. Also, I'd love it if you stay tuned until Friday. I have a challenge from Bree for you that will hopefully help you get closer to your goals or live a cleaner life. Put the inspiration and motivation from today's episode into action. In addition to sharing, of course, subscribing would be helpful. That way, when Bree's Challenge comes out on Friday, you either get an automatic download or an alert. And then my last ask for you, other than my usual closing ask, is to leave a review on iTunes. It's like giving me a hug from afar. And I'm on my honeymoon as you listen to this, so hugs and love are what it's all about. And I would love another one. So I appreciate that in advance. Okay, here it is, what you're expecting. As always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.